I was sitting in a care facility when my older brother's passing left me with something I could never have imagined, a sprawling ranch in Montana, with secrets buried deep within its land. And the moment I heard the news, my estranged daughter showed up, demanding I sign everything over. "Give it to us, Mother. We'll make sure you're taken care of, you ungrateful old woman." But when the lawyer walked in, that was the turning point. Stay with me until the end of my story, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from so I'll know how far my words have traveled. The only sound breaking the heavy quiet of Pine Grove Rest Home was the scraping of Mrs. Taylor's walker against the tiled floor. I sat in my usual seat by the window, staring at the same bleak parking lot I'd been looking at for 3 years. 3 years, 1 month, and 19 days. Not that I was keeping track. My name is Margaret Holloway. I'm 68 years old, and this nursing home had become my entire existence. Not by choice. My daughter Evelyn and her husband Richard made that decision for me on a bitterly cold morning back in February 2020. "Mom, we just can't manage this anymore," Evelyn had said with that rehearsed concern that always sounded hollow. "You're getting forgetful. With Richard's job and the kids, it's just too much." She'd let her words trail off, letting the insult hang there like a shadow. Forgetful. That's what she called it when I asked why nearly $25,000 had disappeared from my account. Coincidentally, right around the time Richard suddenly had enough for a new boat. When I pressed, suddenly I was confused, not thinking clearly. But I knew better. I wasn't losing my mind. I just couldn't prove what they were doing. I shifted in the chair, wincing at the familiar ache in my back. The nurses here were polite enough, but they treated us like children. "Time for your medication, Margaret," they'd sing-song, as if I hadn't managed my own pills for decades before being locked away here. Through the glass, I saw a family helping their elderly father into a car. His daughter held his arm gently, smiling at something he said. A sharp pang twisted in my chest. When was the last time Evelyn had laughed with me instead of sneering at me? I couldn't recall. The last real talk we had was at my grandson Liam's 9th birthday. I had saved for months to buy him the skateboard he wanted. His face had glowed with excitement when he ripped the paper off. But afterward, Evelyn pulled me aside, her mouth tight with irritation. "Mom, stop spoiling him. You make Richard and me look bad when we can't buy things like that." Her words sliced deep, especially knowing she'd just bought herself new living room furniture that cost twice as much. "I only wanted to make him happy," I had whispered. "Well, maybe think about our feelings instead of trying to buy his love." That was Evelyn's way, twisting every act of love into something selfish. And here I was, paying nearly $4,200 a month to live in this place. Money stripped from my pension and Social Security. Money that could have gone to Liam's college savings or Emma's ballet lessons. Instead, it funded my exile. "Margaret." The voice startled me from my thoughts. It was Clara, one of the nurses, smiling gently. "There's someone here for you." "A lawyer." My heart thudded. A lawyer? In 3 years, my only visitors had been the occasional church volunteer, and once, Evelyn, who showed up on Christmas morning, stayed less than an hour, and spent half that time on her phone. "A lawyer?" I echoed, hardly believing it. "Yes. He's waiting in the conference room. Want me to walk you there?" I rose slowly, my hands trembling. What could a lawyer possibly want with me? My will was simple. Everything to Evelyn and the grandchildren. Not that there was much left. The walk down the corridor seemed endless, the sound of my footsteps mixing with a faint TV in the distance and someone coughing in another room. The walls were painted pale peach, fake flowers lined the hallway, but it still felt like what it was, a place where people waited to be forgotten. The conference room was sterile, with a small round table and 4 chairs. A man in his 50s, well-dressed in an expensive suit, stood as I entered. "Mrs. Holloway," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel Price, attorney for the estate of Henry Holloway. I'm deeply sorry for your loss." Henry. My older brother. The room tilted for a moment. I gripped the back of a chair. Henry, when? 3 days ago. Heart attack. Very sudden. He guided me into a chair. My mind reeled. Henry. Dead at 73. We hadn't spoken in years, not since our argument over Mother's ring. A trivial fight, in hindsight, but pride had kept us apart. And now, too late. I know this is overwhelming, Mr. Price said gently, but your brother left clear instructions about reaching you. He was adamant that I deliver this personally. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Mrs. Holloway, your brother left you something significant in his will. The words blurred in front of me. But Henry and I weren't close anymore. Maybe not recently, but he always spoke of you. He was concerned about your situation here. Heat burned my face. Even Henry had known. Knew that my own daughter had discarded me. What did he leave me? I asked softly. Before the lawyer could answer, the door flew open. Evelyn swept in, slightly breathless but perfectly styled, not a hair out of place. Richard followed close behind, his jaw set in that hard expression I'd come to loathe. Mom! Evelyn exclaimed, plastering on fake concern as she rushed over. I came as soon as I heard about Uncle Henry. Are you all right? Why didn't anyone call me? I studied her carefully, the designer handbag, the manicured nails, the jewelry glinting under the fluorescent lights. All this while claiming she couldn't help with my care. She wasn't here for me. She was here because she'd heard about the lawyer. Mr. Price cleared his throat. This meeting was arranged with Mrs. Holloway. That's fine, Evelyn interrupted smoothly, dropping into the seat beside me without being invited. I'm her daughter. I handle all of Mom's affairs now. She patted my hand in that syrupy, condescending way that made my skin crawl. Don't I, Mom? Richard stood by the door like a guard, his eyes flicking hungrily toward the paperwork spread on the table. Actually, I said firmly, surprising myself, I'd like to hear what Mr. Price has to say. Evelyn's smile wavered, but she kept her voice sweet. Of course, Mom. I'll just help you understand it all. You know, legal things can be confusing. That phrase. How many times had she used it to undermine me? To dismiss my questions? You know how confusing things can be for you, Mom. Her favorite weapon to silence me. Mr. Price met my eyes. Mrs. Holloway, your brother Henry owned a ranch in Montana. 2,000 acres of land that's been in your family for over 6 decades. I blinked. A ranch? But Henry worked at the mill. That was his day job, yes. But he inherited the ranch from your uncle and quietly managed it for years. He slid a photograph across the table. A breathtaking log home stood against rolling hills, a red barn in the distance, mountains rising beyond. It was straight out of a postcard. Why didn't he ever tell me? I whispered. Henry was a private man, Mr. Price said gently. Evelyn leaned forward, nearly trembling with excitement. So what exactly are we talking about here? Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Mr. Price suggested. No need, Evelyn cut in sharply. Like I said, I handle everything for Mom now. She gripped my hand harder than necessary, her nails digging into my skin. What details? I asked, pulling free. Mr. Price opened another folder and slid a bank statement across the table. My breath caught as I read the figure once, twice, a third time. $8,700,000. Your brother was very careful with his money, Mr. Price explained. He bought gold when the market was low, invested steadily in government bonds, and over the years acquired shares in major companies. He lived simply, never flaunted it, and just let his fortune grow quietly. The room went still. My ears roared with the sound of my own pulse. $8.5 million. Henry, the brother I'd believed lived off nothing but his modest pension, had been a wealthy man all along. Holy, Richard muttered near the door, his voice cracking with disbelief. Evelyn shot him a sharp look, then turned back to me, her eyes wide with fake awe. Mom, this is unbelievable. Uncle Henry must have adored you to leave all this. But I wasn't looking at her. My gaze was fixed on Mr. Price, trying to comprehend what he had just told me. He left everything? The ranch, the investments. All of it, the lawyer confirmed. The property, the assets, even mineral rights beneath the land. And this. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name scrawled across it in Henry's handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open. Henry's neat script blurred through my tears as I began to read. Margaret, if you're holding this letter, I'm gone. And now you know what I've left for you. I regret the years we spent apart. That was my fault. I should have put aside my stubbornness and called. I never forgot how you protected me when we were kids. You were the one who got me to school, the one who kept things together when Father drank himself into rages. You were more of a parent than either of ours ever tried to be. I heard what Evelyn did. Don't be surprised, I may have kept to myself, but people talk. I know she forced you into that place, and I know why. I should have stepped in, but after our fight, I thought you wouldn't want my help. The truth is, the ranch should have been yours from the start. Father meant for us both to share it, but I let anger win. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. You deserved more than the life you were handed. Use this gift to live on your terms, not theirs. Your brother, Henry. By the time I finished, my vision swam. He had known exactly how Evelyn had treated me, and he cared enough to make it right. What does it say, Mom? Evelyn's voice sounded distant, strained with curiosity. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. It's private. Evelyn's tone shifted, her patience waned. Mom, we need to be rational about this. Managing a ranch? Handling millions? That's not realistic for you. I never said I wanted to do it alone. Exactly, she pressed, her eyes gleaming. That's why Richard and I are here. We can guide you. Maybe sell the ranch, put the money in a safe trust. Let us take this burden off your shoulders. Richard stepped forward, his eagerness barely masked. I've got some real estate experience. I could drive up this weekend, check the property, and get a sense of what it's worth. I studied them both carefully. Evelyn in her tailored clothes, Richard with his greedy stare locked on the papers. They had appeared out of thin air the moment money was mentioned. 3 years of near silence, and now suddenly they were concerned about helping. That's considerate of you, I said evenly. But I need time to think. Of course, Evelyn said smoothly. But you must understand, decisions like this can't wait. Taxes, legal deadlines. Actually, Mr. Price interjected, his voice calm but firm, your brother structured everything to minimize tax complications. And I'll handle the legal side. Mrs. Holloway has all the time she needs. Evelyn's smile twitched. Well, yes, but surely it makes sense to involve family. Where has family been these past 3 years? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The air went heavy. Evelyn blinked, stung. Mom, that's not fair. We visit. You visited exactly 4 times. 3 of those were holidays. And the last time, at Christmas, you complained about the drive the entire visit. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. Mom, we've had so much going on. The kids, work. Too busy to call. Too busy to take me out. Too busy to bring your children here. I stood slowly, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in years. but not too busy to rush here the moment money entered the picture. Richard shifted uneasily. Look, Margaret, I think this is a misunderstanding. No misunderstandings, I said, my voice like ice. Only clarity. Mom, please. Evelyn reached for me. Her hand was soft, familiar, but her words rang hollow. For a fleeting moment I saw her as the little girl who used to run into my arms during storms. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who saw me as a burden. Mr. Price, I said firmly, I'd like another meeting. Just you and me. He nodded. Of course. Tomorrow morning? That would be fine. Evelyn shot to her feet, her mask slipping. Mom, you can't just shut us out. We're your family. I turned at the door. Family doesn't discard one another in nursing homes and vanish for years. Her voice followed me, shrill and desperate, but for the first time in years, I didn't turn back to soothe her. I walked away. That night, sleep barely touched me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Henry's words, "You deserve better than what you got." His letter lay safe in my nightstand, but I'd memorized every word. $8.5 million. Enough to leave this place behind. Enough to finally live freely. Hope surged through me, but so did doubt. Who was I fooling? I was nearly 70, tucked away because my daughter insisted I couldn't manage my life. What did I know about handling land or wealth? The next morning, Clara approached me in the dining hall, her face uneasy. Margaret, your daughter's here. She brought the children. My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. Evelyn never brought them here. In 3 years, Liam and Emma had come only twice, both visits rushed, Evelyn claiming the place was too depressing for kids. Tell her I'll be right there, I said, my stomach twisting. In the lobby, Liam, now 11, sat slouched in a chair, his eyes glued to his phone. Emma, just 8, fidgeted beside him, her pigtails bouncing as she looked around nervously. Neither looked happy to be here. Evelyn stood by the desk, immaculate as always, tension etched in her posture. She forced a bright smile. Mom, look who came to see you. Liam barely looked up. Hi, Grandma. Emma rushed forward, hugging me tight. Grandma Margaret, Mommy says we can take you to lunch. My heart softened at her excitement, though I couldn't help but wonder what Evelyn had bribed them with. That sounds lovely, sweetheart. There's a quiet cafe downtown, Evelyn said, already guiding us toward the door. Perfect for talking. The cafe was hushed, the kind of place where voices carried too easily. Evelyn chose a corner booth, positioning herself to scan the room, always calculating, always in control. Liam and Emma sat across from us, pushing around a plate of cookies they had barely touched. I hope you're not upset about yesterday, Evelyn began carefully, stirring her coffee as though she had rehearsed every motion. I know it might have seemed like we were insistent, but we're only worried about you. I lifted my teacup, waiting silently. I'd learned long ago that Evelyn always revealed more if I let her fill the quiet. This inheritance, it's wonderful. Uncle Henry was so generous. But, Mom, you have to admit how overwhelming this must be for you. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. Managing that much money. A ranch. It's a lot for anyone, even someone with experience. And you don't think I'm capable of it? I think you're incredible, Mom, Evelyn said smoothly. But you're in assisted care for a reason. The doctors said. What doctors? I cut her off. I've only ever had my routine checkups. Her smile wavered. Well, Dr. Morrison mentioned memory lapses. Dr. Morrison told me I had mild arthritis and slightly high blood pressure. Nothing about my mind. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Emma glanced up, sensing the tension. Are you okay, Grandma? I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. Evelyn straightened, regaining her composure. The point is, we want to help you make good choices. Richard's been looking into investment firms. It'd be safer to place everything into a managed account. No stress for you. And of course, we'd monitor things. Monitor things, I repeated flatly. Yes. We could even set up a monthly allowance so Pinegrove is always paid. You'd never have to worry. And there it was. They wanted the money, and they wanted me to stay exactly where I was. What if I wanted to leave Pinegrove? I asked quietly. Her mask slipped. Mom, be realistic. You can't live alone anymore. Remember when you left the stove on? Once, I snapped. One single time, when Richard had me on the phone, begging for a loan to cover Emma's dentist bill. And I never forgot to pay bills. I noticed $25,000 missing from my account, and you didn't like me asking questions. Liam finally looked up from his phone. What happened to Grandma's bank? Nothing, honey, Evelyn said quickly, plastering on a smile. Grandma just gets mixed up sometimes. I'm not mixed up, I said firmly. And I am not incompetent. Of course not, Evelyn said in that patronizing tone I despised. But Mom, this is millions of dollars. What if someone tricks you? What if you lose it all? Like trusting my own daughter? The words fell between us like glass shattering. Emma's eyes welled with tears, and even the couple at the next table went quiet. Evelyn's face drained, then flushed crimson. I can't believe you'd say that. Can't you? My voice trembled, but I kept it steady. In 3 years, you visited 4 times. You called maybe a dozen. Half those calls were to ask me to fix your insurance mess. You forced me into this home and walked away. And now, less than a day after hearing about an inheritance, you show up, pretending it's about love. We're here because we love you. No, I shook my head. You're here because you smell money. Emma began to cry. The sound pierced me, but I couldn't back down. Not now. Liam pulled his sister close, his young face troubled. Why is Grandma sad? She's not sad, darling, Evelyn said, her voice breaking into real tears this time. She's just confused. I'm not confused, I said. I'm furious. That's the difference. Richard appeared suddenly at the booth, sliding in beside her as though he'd been waiting outside. Everything all right here? She's fine, Evelyn muttered, though her hands shook. Mom's just having one of her episodes. I am not having an episode, I said loudly enough for heads to turn. I am confronting my daughter about abandoning me in a nursing home and only reappearing when money was on the table. Margaret, let's calm down, Richard said evenly, though his tone was firm. Like it or not, whatever you decide affects all of us. If you mismanage this money, it'll fall on us to clean up the mess. Consequences? I demanded. You mean who'll care for me when I'm old and broke? Is that what you're saying? That if I don't hand everything over, you'll leave me entirely? Be practical, Mom, Evelyn pressed, dabbing at her eyes. What would you even do with a ranch in Montana? You can't drive long distances. You don't know cattle or land. Think. I looked around that table, at Richard, who saw me only as a liability. At Evelyn, who convinced herself that control was the same as care. At Liam and Emma, who were learning love came with conditions. You're right, I said at last. Evelyn's face lit up. I knew you'd see reason. But I can learn. Her smile froze. I can hire people who know about ranching. I can read, take courses, ask questions. I raised a family and worked 30 years full-time. Don't tell me I can't figure this out. And if I don't want to, I can sell the ranch. Buy a house. Travel. Donate. The point is, it's my choice. Richard leaned closer. And what about us? What about college for Liam and Emma? Don't we matter? And what about the $25,000 missing from my account? What about 3 years of abandonment? My voice hardened. What about treating me as a human being instead of a burden? Fine, Evelyn snapped, her voice icy. She snatched up her purse. If that's how you feel, then handle it alone. But don't expect us to pick up the pieces when it falls apart. Come on, kids. The children scrambled up, Emma's face streaked with tears. She turned to me. Are you mad at us, Grandma? My heart cracked. No, sweetheart. Never. I love you more than anything. Then why don't you just do what Mommy says? I crouched down, ignoring the pain in my knees. Because sometimes, grown-ups have to make hard choices. But my love for you never changes. I hugged them tight, breathing them in. When I looked up, Evelyn's cheeks were wet too. This isn't over, she whispered. We won't let you ruin yourself. As they walked away, Liam turned back, his face far too serious for his age. Bye, Grandma. I sat for a long while after, tea cold in my cup, hands trembling. I had just declared war on my own family. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to win. The next morning, I walked into the conference room again. Mr. Price was waiting, this time with boxes stacked neatly by his side. His face was grave. Mrs. Holloway, he said as I entered. I hope you don't mind. Your brother left additional materials for you, things he wanted delivered only after certain pressures arose. What kind of materials? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted a manila envelope, sealed with red wax. Henry's initials pressed into the seal. He said to give you this if anyone in your family tried to coerce you about the inheritance. My chest tightened. How could he have known? Your brother was very perceptive. He explained your circumstances. He suspected the news of money would draw people out. With trembling hands, I broke the seal. Inside was another letter, Henry's writing, but sharper, edged with anger. Margaret, if you're reading this, then I was right about what would happen. They came circling the money, didn't they? Probably within hours of hearing the news. I need to tell you things I should have told you years ago, things about Evelyn that destroyed any respect I had for her. Do you remember when Father's house sold after he passed? The realtor was my friend's daughter, and she confided something unusual. The sale price was $185,000, yet you only received $85,000. When I pressed Evelyn about it, she gave you a stack of supposed receipts, repairs, liens, back taxes, that supposedly drained the difference. That was a lie. I saw the closing documents myself. 2 weeks before Father died, Evelyn had convinced him to add her name to the deed when he was too ill to understand what he was signing. She pocketed $100,000 that should have been yours. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the letter. Father's house. I had always wondered why my share was so small, but Evelyn's explanations had seemed convincing at the time. I had trusted her. But there was more. Remember 3 years ago, when you broke your hip and called Evelyn for help? She stayed a few days, fussing over you. What you never knew was that while you slept, Richard rifled through your desk. They photocopied everything, bank records, insurance papers, even your will. Mrs. Callahan, your neighbor, saw Richard leaving with armfuls of folders. She told her daughter, who told me. By then, you were already in Pine Grove. And the missing money? After you mentioned it, I hired a private investigator. Richard forged your name on a withdrawal slip and tipped $25,000. The investigator obtained bank security footage, Richard, standing at the teller window. The signatures side by side, yours and the forgery. I'm enclosing copies of everything, the doctored deed, the bank videos, even records of Evelyn calling Pinegrove 2 months before your hip surgery to ask about costs. She had been planning your placement all along. I should have told you sooner. But I wanted to believe she might change. She never did. Don't let her rob you of this inheritance as well. You deserve better. Henry. The letter slid from my trembling hands. Mr. Price was watching me closely, but said nothing. Instead, he opened a box and drew out a heavy folder. Your brother was meticulous, he said softly. Inside were photocopies of documents I had never seen before, the deed to father's house with Evelyn's name scribbled on days before his death, bank records showing the forged withdrawal, stills from a security camera with Richard standing at the counter, my signature clearly not matching the one on the slip. And the worst of all, a recording. Do you want to hear this? Mr. Price asked, holding up a small recorder. I nodded, though dread coiled in my stomach. Evelyn's voice played, calm and businesslike. I'm calling about your memory care unit. My mother is showing signs of dementia, and we're preparing options. The administrator asked, what symptoms exactly? Confusion over money, forgetting bills, leaving appliances on, paranoia about relatives stealing. The usual things. The air left my lungs. Even after all this time, hearing her describe me that way stung like a blade. Has she seen a physician? We're working on that, but she resists. We may need to act quickly. She had a fall recently. The fall she referenced was me tripping on a rug. A bruise, nothing more. Yet she had twisted it into evidence of mental decline. The recording ended with her coldly asking about fees, visitor rules, emergency placements. I sat frozen, my chest heaving. She planned it, I whispered. Every step. Mr. Price nodded gravely. Your brother suspected as much. That's why he gathered this evidence. Why would she do this? He hesitated. Based on what Henry told me, she saw you as a burden. With you out of the way, she had free access to your assets. And Richard, he had debts. Serious ones. They were drowning in overdue bills when you were placed here. It all clicked, the flashy clothes Evelyn wore when she visited, the new truck Richard drove, the extravagant vacation they bragged about online. All of it financed with money stolen from me. What can I do? I asked. Mr. Price slid another folder across. Your brother anticipated that question. The evidence is enough to pursue charges: fraud, forgery, elder exploitation. The district attorney would likely act. But whether you press charges, that's your choice. Just know, what they did isn't only cruel, it's criminal. And based on Henry's investigation, you're likely not their only victim. What do you mean? Richard's father. He died in care 2 years ago. His estate should have been worth around $150,000. At death, less than $10,000 remained. Richard claimed it went to medical expenses. I closed my eyes. How many lives had they hollowed out for their own greed? There's more, Mr. Price continued. Henry set up the trust with protections. Even if you wanted to, you cannot grant Evelyn access. The structure is ironclad. The money can only be used for you, directly. Not $1 can be siphoned away. For the first time in years, warmth spread through my chest. Henry had thought of everything. He really protected me, I whispered. Mr. Price smiled faintly. He loved you enough to make sure this time, no one could strip you of what was yours. I gathered the folder in my arms. Proof. Not only of betrayal, but of my sanity. I was not paranoid. Not feeble. Not confused. Mr. Price, I want to see the ranch. Of course. I'll arrange a car. But are you certain? It's remote. Managing land that size isn't simple. I've never been more certain, I said. As I walked back to my room, clutching the folder, a new feeling surged through me: power. Real power, born from truth and Henry's foresight. Evelyn and Richard had misjudged me. They thought I was fragile, compliant, easy prey. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 3 days passed before Evelyn called. In that time, I had already scheduled a trip to see the ranch, met with a financial advisor Daniel recommended, and steeled myself for what must come. Her name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Mom," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." "Hello, Evelyn. I've been thinking about what happened at the cafe. We both said things we didn't mean. Family is family. We need to work this out." "What did you have in mind?" I asked, watching the dull parking lot outside the window. "Richard and I spoke with an attorney. We believe the best solution is a family trust, with the 3 of us as trustees. That way, everyone has a say. There's accountability. It protects you." "By accountability, you mean keeping me from using my own inheritance?" "Mom, please. This isn't about control. It's about protection. About protecting all of us." "Where have you been these 3 days, then?" She paused. "What do you mean? If this was such a crisis, why wait? Why didn't you call sooner?" We needed time. To research. To make sure we had the right plan. You needed time to figure out how to take control. The silence that followed was long. When she spoke again, her tone was sharp, brittle. "Fine. You want honesty? We're worried you'll make reckless choices that ruin everything. You haven't exactly shown the best judgment." "And what judgment are you referring to? You let father walk over you for decades. You stayed in a dead-end job when you could have done better. You trusted people who used you. And now look, you're alone in a nursing home." Every word Evelyn spoke was sharpened to wound, to chip away at my confidence. The old Margaret, the one who bowed her head, apologized, and accepted blame, would have folded. But that woman was gone. I had truth in my hands now, and truth was power. "You're right," I said evenly. "I did trust people who took advantage of me. But I'm learning from those mistakes." "Good." Her relief was instant. "So you'll agree to the family trust?" "Actually," I replied, calm as stone, "I've decided to take your advice from the cafe." Her pause crackled across the line. "Which advice?" "That I make my decisions alone." The silence that followed was sharp, electric. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want your help managing this inheritance. I'm making my own choices. And I think it's time you and Richard answer for yours." "What are you talking about?" I rested Henry's folder in my lap, running my fingers over the damning evidence inside. "I'm talking about the $100,000 you took when you tricked father into signing over the deed. I'm talking about the $25,000 Richard stole from my bank with a forged signature. I'm talking about the years you kept me locked away here while telling everyone I was incompetent." The silence on her end was suffocating. "I don't know what lies Uncle Henry filled your head with," Evelyn whispered. "He didn't tell me. He showed me. Bank records. Security footage. Copies of your calls. Everything. That's impossible. Would you like me to play the recording of you phoning Pine Grove, months before my hip surgery? The one where you fabricated dementia symptoms so they'd be ready for me?" Her breath caught, sharp and panicked. "Mom, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said coldly. "You've always been gifted at spinning stories where I'm the senile mother and you're the selfless daughter. But I'm done listening. You can't prove." "Actually, I can. Henry hired an investigator. There are documents, photos, tapes. Crimes that the district attorney would find very interesting. You wouldn't. Her voice cracked. You wouldn't do that to us. Think of Liam and Emma. Think of what this would do to them. There it was, using my grandchildren as pawns, just as she had at the cafe. I have thought of them, Evelyn. I've thought about what they're learning from you. That it's acceptable to steal from family. To discard your elders. That love depends on money. What kind of mother teaches that? That's not. Isn't it? Liam is 11. He's never spent one night at his grandmother's home. Emma is 8. She's seen me maybe half a dozen times in 3 years. What are you teaching them about family? We were protecting them from seeing you like this, she snapped. Like what? Independent? Refusing to be manipulated? Standing up for myself? Heaven forbid your children witness their grandmother remembering her worth. You're twisting everything. No, I said softly. I'm finally seeing it clearly. Her composure cracked. Fine. If you want to cut us out, go ahead. But don't come running when it all falls apart. Don't expect us to save you when you lose everything. I won't need saving, I said. Because unlike you, I'm not planning to steal from those I claim to love. Her voice turned sharp, cruel. You know what? You deserve to be alone. You've always been selfish, always played the victim. Maybe being abandoned is exactly what you earned. The words should have shattered me. A week ago, they would have. But now? They sounded small. Weak. Maybe you're right, I whispered. Maybe I do deserve to be alone. But if that's true, what do you deserve, for stealing, for lying, for betrayal? The line went dead. She had hung up. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. Richard this time. Margaret, we need to talk. Evelyn's hysterical. This has gone too far. Hello, Richard. How's the truck you bought with my money? A long pause. I think you're mistaken. No mistake. I have bank slips, surveillance photos. Proof. Look, if there were irregularities, we can sort them out. But dragging the law into this? That's extreme. Extreme? Forgery. Elder fraud. Abuse. That's what's extreme. His voice hardened. You think this inheritance makes you powerful? You're still just an old woman in a care facility. You'll still need us. Do I? Who's driven me to appointments the past 3 years? Who's given me my medication? Not you. Not Evelyn. Paid nurses, people who actually care. And when the money's gone? When you're 90, broke, helpless? What then? Then I'll handle it myself. Just like I've been handling life without you for 3 years. You really want to die alone? The words cut deep, they touched my darkest fear. But then I remembered the truth, I'd been alone already. Their presence had been nothing but absence in disguise. I've been alone, Richard, I said quietly. The only difference now is, it's my choice. I hung up. Then immediately dialed Daniel Price. I want to see the ranch tomorrow, I told him. And I want paperwork started to move there. Are you certain, Mrs. Holloway? This is a major change. I'm certain. For the first time in years, I'm certain. That evening, I sat in my small room and wrote 2 letters. One for Liam and Emma, telling them that Grandma loved them, that someday they would understand. The second, for Daniel, detailed instructions in case Evelyn or Richard tried to have me declared incompetent. Then I pressed record on the small device Daniel had given me. For over an hour I spoke, recounting every slight, every theft, every manipulation. If they wanted to challenge my competency, I would hand them undeniable proof of my clarity. The next morning, I packed what little I had into 2 suitcases. A few clothes. A handful of books. Photographs I couldn't part with. Henry's letters, tucked safely between sweaters. For the first time in years, I smiled while closing a suitcase. They thought they could cage me with fear, control me with shame, strip me of everything I was. They were about to learn the difference between being abandoned and being free. The drive to Montana took 6 hours, but it felt like stepping into another world. Daniel had arranged a driver. As the prairie faded into hills and valleys dotted with cattle, I felt something I hadn't in years: anticipation. The ranch was even more breathtaking than the photos. The log house stood proudly on a hill, gazing out over green pastures and a silver creek. Snow-capped mountains guarded the horizon. "Everything okay back there, Mrs. Holloway?" the driver asked, catching sight of my tears in the mirror. "Yes," I whispered. "Everything's perfect." Tom and Linda Garrett, trusted caretakers Henry had hired long ago, met me at the gate. Their weathered faces and warm smiles felt like coming home. "Henry spoke of you constantly," Linda said, her eyes kind as she led me inside. "He was proud of you. Worried, too. Said you deserved better than what life handed you." The house was wide and bright, with 4 bedrooms, a stone hearth, sturdy handmade furniture, and shelves lined with Henry's books and ranch ledgers. "The cattle practically run themselves," Tom explained as he showed me the barns. 200 head of Angus. Good grazing, steady water. "This place has turned a profit every year for decades." I stood in the barn doorway, breathing the scent of hay and earth, listening to the steady lowing of cattle. It was so peaceful I could hear my own heartbeat. "Are you thinking of staying?" Linda asked gently. "I'm thinking of living," I replied. That evening, I called Daniel from Henry's old study, surrounded by neatly kept files. "How was your first day as a rancher?" he asked. "Overwhelming. And wonderful. I want this to be permanent." "I thought you might," he said. "I've already arranged for your care to transfer to the local clinic. Dr. Chen comes highly recommended, and she makes house calls." "I'm not elderly," I said, then laughed softly. "Well, maybe by age. But I don't feel it." "That's because you're not living like it anymore. You're living." Over the next week, I began a life I hadn't dared dream of. I woke with the sun, sipped coffee on the porch, watched cattle graze. Tom taught me the rhythms of the land. Linda showed me the garden Henry had tended. I hired a local woman, Marie, to help once or twice a week. She brought laughter into the quiet house, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. I was no longer surviving. I was alive. Through Linda, I was introduced to the rest of the community: Dr. Reynolds, the veterinarian who had looked after Henry's cattle for years, Mr. Wilkes, who ran the feed store and spoke of my brother as if he were family, and the postmaster, who remembered the day Henry first signed the papers for the land. For the first time in my adult life, I belonged somewhere. These people knew me for who I was, not for what they could take from me. On my 10th day at the ranch, the phone rang. Evelyn's voice, tight with panic. "Mom, people are saying you moved to Montana. Please tell me that isn't true." I was on the porch, watching Tom mend a fence while Linda hung sheets on the line, the scene glowing with ordinary peace. "It's true," I said. "Mom, you can't be serious. You don't know how to live alone, let alone on some isolated ranch. What if something happens to you? The same thing that would have happened at Pine Grove. I'd get medical care. This is reckless. You're going to get yourself killed out there." "Evelyn, I've been here 10 days. I haven't fallen. I haven't forgotten medication. I haven't left a stove on. I've cooked my own meals, managed my own schedule, even learned to drive the ranch truck. You're driving? Her voice rose. Mom, your reflexes. My reflexes are fine. What wasn't fine was being treated like I was already gone. I'll call Adult Protective Services. The threat should have rattled me. Instead, I felt calm. Go ahead. Mr. Price has a full file, medical reports, financial evaluations, witness statements from the people here. And if you make that call, he's ready to file countercharges for elder abuse and fraud. Silence. Evelyn, I said gently, I'm not hiding from you. I'm not running away. I'm walking towards something better. You taught me what I deserved by showing me what I didn't. I never wanted it to go this far. Didn't you? You put me in a home and left me there. You stole from me, lied about me, tried to seize what wasn't yours. What did you think would happen when I learned the truth? A pause, then a whisper, I thought. I thought you'd forgive me. Like always. I do forgive you, Evelyn. But forgiving isn't forgetting. And it isn't letting it happen again. So that's it. You're cutting us out forever? I watched Tom lift his hand in a wave as he worked, a small acknowledgement that I existed, that I mattered. Something Evelyn hadn't given me in years. I'm not cutting you out, I said. But I won't chase you anymore. If you want me in your life, it must be on the terms of respect. Not convenience. Not control. Real respect. And the kids? Her voice cracked. They'll always be welcome. When they're old enough to decide for themselves, my door will be open. You're punishing them for my mistakes. No. I'm protecting myself. That's the difference. When the call ended, I sat on the porch as the sun melted behind the mountains. Linda brought tea and sat beside me without words. Henry once wrote that I deserved better than what I got, I murmured. For years, I thought that meant from others. Maybe he meant from myself. I spent nearly 70 years accepting less because I feared being alone. But being alone isn't the worst thing. Being with people who don't value you, that's far worse. Linda nodded softly. Henry used to say the difference between loneliness and solitude is choice. A month later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was Liam's school photo and a drawing from Emma, a little house surrounded by flowers. On the back, in careful handwriting, she had written, I love you, Grandma. I placed the photo on the mantel, the drawing on the fridge beside grocery lists and Dr. Chen's appointment cards. 2 months later, the phone rang again. A young voice, shaky but determined. Grandma Margaret? It's Liam. Mom doesn't know I'm calling. Are you really living on a ranch? I clutched the receiver. I am. No horses, but cows, chickens, and mountains that stretch forever. Could Sarah and I visit when we're older? Oh, sweetheart. You can visit any time your mother allows. But know this, I always want to see you. She says you don't. The lie pierced like glass. That's not true. I love you both more than anything. Sometimes grown-ups fight, and it makes things hard. But I will always want you with me. Is it because Mom did something bad? Smart boy. Too perceptive. Probably. But what matters is, I finally learned to stand up for myself. Good, he said fiercely. You should. After we hung up, I called Daniel. Set up college funds for Liam and Emma. Money Evelyn can't touch. Direct access when they turn 18. That's generous, Mrs. Holloway. Not generosity. An investment. One day, they'll have questions. When they do, I want them to know their grandmother never stopped loving them. 6 months later, I was feeding chickens when I spotted a familiar car winding up the ranch road. My chest tightened. Instinct told me to run. Instead, I scattered the last of the feed and waited. Evelyn stepped out, thinner, lines carved into her face. She looked around at the ranch with something close to awe. "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Evelyn." We faced each other in the yard, two women scarred by years of hurt. "The kids miss you," she said. "I miss them too. Liam keeps asking to visit. Emma still draws pictures of me? All the time." Her eyes welled. "I came to apologize. Really apologize. Not to drag you back. And to tell you Richard and I are divorcing." When he realized we wouldn't touch the inheritance, he showed who he truly was. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he was stealing from. A flicker of sympathy stirred, though I wasn't surprised. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" "I'm sorry you're hurting. Sorry the kids are caught in this. But I'm not sorry you're learning who he is." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I know I don't deserve this, but can we start again? Not erase the past, but build something new?" I looked at her carefully. For the first time in years, I saw humility. A sliver of remorse. The possibility of change. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're here because you want me, or because you want something." "I want my mother back," she whispered. "I want my children to know their grandmother. I want to stop being the daughter who abandoned you. It wasn't everything. It wouldn't erase years of wounds. But it was a beginning. Would you like to come in for coffee?" I asked at last. As we walked toward the house, I caught my reflection in the window, a straight-backed woman in work boots and jeans, sun-browned, eyes steady. A woman who finally knew her worth. Henry had been right. I deserved better. And now, I demanded it. The ranch stretched wide around me, mountains rising in the distance, unyielding, steadfast. For the first time in 67 years, I was exactly where I belonged. Now I ask you, listening to my story, what would you have done in my place? Have you faced something similar? Share your thoughts below. And before you go, I've left 2 more stories on the screen, favorites from this channel that will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until the end.